Young and the Restless. Brooks Prentiss, the man behind Dumas, blast from Y&R past? Alright, so we got this character, Dumas. Everybody's talking about this billionaire and a power player in the business world. But nobody's ever met him. They don't know much about him. Victor Newman, Eric Braeden, is his longtime rival. And Damian Kane, Jermaine Rivers, hasn't even met him, even though he's worked for him a couple of years. But what if this mystery man is somebody familiar yet unexpected? Now, we've seen a bunch of different suggestions. I'm always interested in seeing what people think is going on. And on soap social media, when it comes to who is Dumas, I've seen people saying it's Victor. No, that doesn't make any sense. He is genuinely irritated by the guy. So, that's just not going to be what it is. I've also seen people suggesting it's Devon Hamilton, Brighton James, which also makes no sense. Why would he? This Dumas thing has been going on for years. So, you got to think about that, you know. And because we know from Damian it's been at least several years that he's been involved with him. So, it would be random and illogical if it were Devon or Victor. Is Kane Ashby or Tucker McCall actually Aristotle Dumas? I've also seen some fans wondering if it could be Kane Ashby. By the way, Daniel Goddard has just started a new role over on General Hospital and he's doing great in the part. By the way, aside from that little wrinkle, Kane would be an intriguing choice. And we've talked before here that Tucker McCall, Trevor St. John, actually fits the bill because of his ties to the Winters and the Abbotts and dislike of Victor. However, there's no sign that Trevor St. John is returning or that the role is coming back. And I really did like Trevor St. John. But I don't think it's him either. But it still could be a blast from the past, just not somebody so obvious as in somebody from way back. Young and the Restless spoilers. Could Aristotle Dumas be a legacy character? And so one of the things I've seen people talking about and I decided to look into and I find very intriguing is that Dumas might be tied back to Genoa City's original legacy families. So the names Brooks and Prentiss right there tells you where we're going. Longtime Y&R fans may remember like OG Stuart Brooks, and he had 4 daughters. One of them was Laura Lee Brooks, who was called Laurie, and she married Lance Prentiss. So, Lance was upset. There was something going on, there was a reason for it. But he cheated on his wife Laurie with her sister Leslie Brooks, who got pregnant, and she gave birth to a baby boy that was named Brooks Prentiss. Young and the Restless history and soap crossovers. And by the way, the character of Laurie Brooks, whose real name is Laura Lee, was actually named after Young and the Restless creator William Bell's daughter, Laura Lee Bell, who of course plays Christine Williams on Y&R. So Lance Prentiss was played by John McCook, who now plays Eric Forrester over on Bold and the Beautiful. So, the woman he cheated with, his wife's sister, his sister-in-law Leslie, she had a breakdown and then ran off and she had amnesia. Anyway, she left her son Brooks with her sister Laurie. And then later Leslie gave up all of her rights and let Laurie and her husband Lance adopt Leslie's biological child, which is also Lance's biological child. It's very typical soapy stuff. The return of Brooks Prentiss. A blast from Young and the Restless past? And Brooks has not been seen since like the mid-80s, I think, when he was maybe a tween. He was born in 1977, but in the 80s he was on for a few scenes and he looked to be around in the 10-year-old range. Anyway, of interest, actor Billy Flynn was born in 1985 while Brooks was born in 1977. That's not a terrible span of years, you know. So Brooks was last on Y&R in courtroom scenes and he wound up rejecting both his birth mom Leslie and his adoptive mom Laurie because there was just a lot of drama. There was a custody thing. And there was a whole blackmail letter and suicide attempt. There was just a whole lot of soapy stuff. And Brooks also said he didn't want anything more to do with his dad, Lance, either. And Brooks went off to Paris, never to be seen again. Victor Newman's connection to Brooks Prentiss. A history of grudges and rivalry. So just in case it is him, let's talk about how Victor ties back to Brooks Prentiss' life. So his dad, Lance Prentiss, had a company, Prentiss Industries. And Victor stole it from Lance. He said it was to teach him a lesson. You know how Victor likes to do. He later gave the company to Laurie, Lance's ex, as an engagement present because Victor was going to marry Lance's ex-wife. But Laurie pulled a fast one, left Victor at the altar and went back to Lance and of course got his company back for him, all that. So Brooks is somebody who could actually have a grudge against Victor since he stole his family's company and was on and off awful to Lance and somewhat to Laurie. Plus, Brooks has ties to Billy Abbott, Jason Thompson, who Dumas has been reaching out to. So, his ties are through Jill Foster Abbott, Jess Walton, who is the adoptive sister of Snapper Foster, who is currently treating Jill's heart condition. Snapper is married to another one of the Brooks daughters. Young and the Restless spoilers. Follow the lines. So there is a line from the Brooks and Prentiss families to Jill and from there to Billy, which could explain why Brooks is reaching out to Billy if he is Dumar and wants to help him take back Chancellor from Victor, because Billy's family company was taken just as Brooks' family company was taken back in the day. Plus he'd have a grudge towards Victor because he did his parents dirty. Aristotle Dumar and the Count of Monte Cristo, literary clues in Young and the Restless? And these literary references also align to Brooks and his past. So first of all, last time we saw him, when he was a young man, he was headed back to Paris. And of course, Alexander Dumas, who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo, is French. So there's the geographical tie-in. There was also a false letter back in the day that was tied to Laurie's typewriter. And in the novel, in the Monte Cristo novel, there's a forged letter that was written by this character, Danglars. And that's the name of one of Dumas' companies that we found out about from Damien. Young and the Restless spoilers, a novel idea. And then, of course, the whole premise of the novel, if you've not read it. I haven't read it since like 9th grade, is that it's someone who's back for revenge for wrongs done to them in their distant past. And that would explain a grudge against Victor. It'd be pretty cool to have a blast from a legacy family's past as part of the storyline. Victor has been destroying people's lives for years and has never suffered any lasting consequences for his actions. But like he'll be sent right out and he doesn't serve the full term, you know. So, it does seem like the puzzle pieces could fit if Brooks Prentiss is the person behind the fake persona of Aristotle Dumas. Plus, it'd be huge to get a throwback to a couple of the original families on Y&R, the Prentiss and the Brooks families. Casting clues. Is Billy Flynn the new Brooks Prentiss on Young and the Restless? So, if we were sticking to real time, he would be about 48 years old and Billy Flynn is a bit younger. He's 39. But Y&R de-aged Chancellor when they brought in Connor Floyd as the recast to replace Donny Boaz. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think they de-aged Tucker McCall when they brought in Trevor St. John by a few years as well. So, it's not something that they have a problem doing. Plus, Billy Flynn definitely has a look that would fit in with the Brooks and Prentiss families. Young and the Restless spoilers. May sweeps ahead. And since we're heading into May sweep starting this Thursday, and Billy Flynn is set to debut in spring, everything feels like it's aligning. Brooks would have the money to compete against Victor because he's an heir to the Prentiss Industries publishing empire. And that would also explain the use of literary names that he has attached to his businesses, because if it is Brooks, his family is in the business of books. I honestly do hope Young and the Restless goes this route for all these reasons. But we'll see. Sometimes, you know, we stumble across something, fans come up with something that really makes sense and really fits, and then Josh Griffith does something just dumb that doesn't make sense instead. So, we'll wait to see who it is gunning for Victor. In Genoa City, nothing is ever truly forgotten. Names that once echoed through the Abbott Mansion or Newman Enterprises boardroom have a way of resurfacing, sometimes years or even decades later, carrying secrets that can change everything. The latest buzz among Young and the Restless fans suggests just that. Whispers of a mysterious new business mogul named Brooks Prentiss, who may be the man behind Dumar International, and possibly a blast from the past that ties directly to one of Y&R's founding families. Could Brooks Prentiss be a link to the show's earliest history? And what would his return mean for today's power players? The name that rings a bell. Longtime Y&R fans know the Prentiss name runs deep. Laurie, Leslie, and Chris Brooks were central to Genoa City's earliest storylines, daughters of the late Stuart Brooks, the man who founded the Genoa City Chronicle and helped shape the town's social scene. Laurie Brooks was a glamorous writer, often torn between ambition and romance, while Leslie became a talented pianist with a troubled love life. For years, the Brooks sisters represented the emotional core of the series before fading into the background as the Newmans, Abbotts, and Winters took over the spotlight. But what if the Prentiss legacy wasn't buried after all? The surname Prentiss is a deliberate nod to Laurie's married name. She wed publishing magnate Lance Prentiss decades ago. Their relationship was passionate and volatile, ending when Laurie left Genoa City for a new start. Could Brooks Prentiss be their son, a man now grown, returning to reclaim both his family's legacy and a piece of Genoa City itself? The Dumas connection. Fans first heard about Dumas International in recent months, the elusive company that's been making bold moves in the cosmetics and media industries. The business has been quietly buying up subsidiaries that used to belong to Jabot, Chancellor Winters, and even Newman Media. No one seems to know who's running the show, only that Dumas' strategy is sharp, sophisticated, and ruthless. Enter Brooks Prentiss, the rumored mastermind behind Dumas. Reports suggest he's a cosmopolitan billionaire with ties to Europe and a mysterious past. He's been operating through shell corporations, keeping his identity secret while subtly drawing the big players of Genoa City into his orbit. Victor Newman has already tried to sniff him out. Jack Abbott is suspicious but impressed by his business acumen. Even Phyllis Summers seems intrigued, which says plenty. If Brooks really is Laurie Brooks and Lance Prentiss's son, then his motives might be deeply personal. The Brooks sisters were the original power players in Genoa City's social scene, yet their influence was eventually overshadowed by the Newmans and Abbotts. Perhaps Brooks Prentiss has come home not only to compete, but to reclaim what was lost. A legacy of love and revenge. It wouldn't be The Young and the Restless without a family feud bubbling beneath the surface. Suppose Brooks Prentiss isn't just here for business. Suppose he's here to settle an old score. Laurie Brooks had plenty of enemies during her time in Genoa City, Nikki Newman among them. The two women famously clashed over Victor's attention decades ago, and Laurie's exit left questions that were never fully answered. Did she leave voluntarily, or was she pushed out by the ruthless business elite who didn't want her meddling in their affairs? Brooks could very well see the Newmans as the reason his mother's legacy faded, giving him all the motivation he needs to target their empire. His first move might be subtle, a business acquisition that puts him shoulder to shoulder with Victoria Newman, who prides herself on sniffing out manipulation. But what happens when she realizes Brooks isn't just another corporate shark? He's a man with a personal vendetta and a deep understanding of Newman weaknesses. And then there's Jack Abbott. Imagine Jack learning that Brooks is the son of Laurie Brooks, his former love. Jack has always had a soft spot for Laurie. Their connection was flirtatious, romantic, and occasionally dangerous. Brooks's arrival could dredge up old memories for Jack, and possibly open a door to unfinished business with Laurie herself. A new era of the old guard. What makes this potential storyline so fascinating is how it bridges Y&R's golden past with its modern-day intrigue. Fans who've watched since the 1970s would see a meaningful tribute to the show's original roots, while new viewers would get a charismatic new character with a rich backstory.